Hello, property nomads. Hope you're well. So, as the global energy crisis returns, the UK push for a green economy makes even more sense, according to The Guardian. You can see we've got this article up here, and we're going to dissect this because this is something that definitely don't agree with, and there's multiple reasons why. I'm just going to have a quick look at this article because The Guardian story by Richard Partington here. It doesn't make much sense to me, and we'll go through as to why that's the case. So basically, world economy last year had a lucky escape. Mild winter in Europe, energy prices were in retreat, despite the fact everyone's staying away from Russian gas, and absolutely fine. We have to accept the fact we really got a very, very big reprieve with a mild winter last year. I'm not quite sure if this winter is going to be the same. The article says that European gas prices have jumped by more than a third since the start of October 2023, before a difficult winter to come, as the conflict in the Middle East threatens to escalate. Oil prices have risen sharply, with a leap of more than $20 a barrel since June, continuing a rise that began even before the war. And that's going to continue to move upwards anyway, but there's going to be a lot of impact on oil moving forwards. Article goes on to say doesn't want to underestimate what's going on in Israel and Gaza. Absolutely fine. I understand that. Let's not focus on that, but it is an extra reason, another geopolitical reason why we're seeing what we're seeing. It could lead to a much longer war, probably will do moving forward. People are saying it's a horrific crisis. It's not, if it's not contained, this will add to the supply strains facing the global economy. Again, what hasn't happened is a lot of that damage was done a while ago when, through pandemics or our government's reaction to certain events, then, we've shot ourselves in the foot. And this is what people, I think, are struggling to understand. They're failing to put the blame really at the doorstep of the government, and more people need to do that because it's their reactions to the events that have put us in this situation. It's not the events themselves, it's the reaction to the events. So what's going to happen moving forward is that, let's, for example, say Iran get involved directly into what's going on at the moment in Israel, Gaza, and that surrounding area. Then a lot of the transit, oil transit, LNG transit, etc., is through the Strait of Hormuz. Best thing to do is go on Google Earth and have a look at the Strait of Hormuz, and you will see how critical that shipping channel is to a lot of products globally. What hasn't helped is that if they do get involved and they're trying to shift oil, or we're getting a lot of LNG from Qatar at the moment, if they get involved and stop transportation around the Strait of Hormuz, then what could happen moving forward? It means that shipping containers might have to take different routes. If they've got to take different routes, that means more expense, and that means the cost of your oil, the cost of your gas is going to be higher than it is already. And this is all because we've decided not to accept things from Russia, because we're upset with the Russians for bombing the crap out of Ukraine, basically. No comment on that. It's not the podcast for that. Of course, if we go back to the title, as a global energy crisis returns, that's correct. I think, well, it's never gone away, but hey ho, the UK push for a green economy makes even more sense. The author here has actually put any information onto why that's the case, but let's read on. So the UK is experiencing a much slower decline in inflation than almost most other advanced economies. Yeah, again, that is true, but if you look at our data in comparison to the rest of the EU, for example, then actually we're not doing too bad. We're doing a lot better than a lot of other countries. Fossil fuels account for almost 80% of the UK's primary energy consumption, and reliance on imports is a risk the government is all too aware of. That's been the case for a very, very, very long time. It doesn't matter what government is, because of our geography and things like that. Yes, we do have a reliance for fossil fuels, and that's been the case since fossil fuels have started to have been used. We've got a reliance. I would say we did have a massive, nice big coal industry, and I wasn't around in the 70s, etc. So I'm not sure of all the political reaction to that and the miners' strikes and all of that sort of stuff. But I know that we've had quite a decent coal mining sector before. So the government's aware fossil fuels account for almost 80% of primary energy consumption. Prime Minister Sushinomics or Rishinomics wants to see billions of pounds invested in renewables, carbon capture and storage, and nuclear. Nuclear is the answer, by the way. If you're listening to that, Mr. Sunak, nuclear is the answer. Yet, despite promising long-term decisions for a brighter future, nowhere near enough is being done to move to low carbon economy. Again, kind of not surprised about that. It doesn't really matter, I think, what the politician is. That's always going to be the case. You say one thing and then do something completely different. Rather than accelerate the transition, apparently Sunak has chosen to water down net zero policies in an attempt to build a narrow electoral advantage. Yet probably that is the case, but it doesn't really matter. We're going to have a Labour government from 2024 onwards anyway. The commentator here says it's not only short-sighted, but makes little economic sense. I would be inclined to agree with that as well. After, and I quote this, after the pandemic, leading nations have struggled to cope with successive shocks to the supply side of the economy, not least because of the current energy crisis. All have added to inflationary pressures, fueling the cost of living emergency. Well, look, let's be honest here. What's happened is that, government decided to shut the country down effectively. That has had a knock-on effect, which we're experiencing now. A lot of currency has been printed as a result of furlough and other schemes, etc., etc. That's increased the supply of currency. The demand or the amount of goods and services hasn't increased. So you've got more currency chasing the same or fewer amount of goods, hence are you going to get inflation? On top of that, because of NATO getting involved in Russia, blah, 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 Russia has decided to invade Ukraine. As a result of that, we've thrown our toys out the pram and gone, yeah, we don't want Russian goodies. And we're now seeing the effect of that. So it's a self-made crisis, and that's affected the global supply chains, etc. It's self-made crisis. It is what it is. What is funny, and this is where I think that the gentleman's understanding of economics and finances is askew with. She says here that in the US, Biden is aiming to capture this opportunity with the vast Inflation Reduction Act, plowing billions of dollars into helping the US meet its climate goals while creating jobs and ultimately bringing down bills for households and businesses. If you go over to America, I pretty much guarantee to you that that has not been the case. So if you've got inflation, then you have Biden's come up with this Inflation Reduction Act, and the answer to that is by printing billions of dollars. So with all due respect to Mr. Partington here, you need to brush up with some economics, my friend, because having an Inflation Reduction Act, you shouldn't be financing that at all. You should be coming up with other policies and other ways of doing that, not printing billions and billions and billions of dollars, because funnily enough, that means that's going to increase currency supply. There's not as many goods and services. So you're just actually going to increase the amount of inflation, not reduce it. That's where I've got an issue with this article. You need to brush up on this information, my friend. But according to this, it's a plan that EU nations are responding to. And one now forming of the cornerstone of Labour's economic agenda. Again, this is another issue moving forward. Let's just say Labour come into power, and if they then start printing more currency, then we're going to end up in the same situation where inflation is not going to go away because we're going to have too much currency chasing few goods and services. And again, this is another issue with the article. It's exactly that Mr. Partington clearly doesn't understand economics 101. It's as simple as that. I understand that the Conservatives are naturally sceptical. That's always been the case. That will always probably be the case. It just needs a coherent strategy moving forward. I apologise also if you can hear all the dogs barking in the background. They have been an absolute pain in the backside for the last couple of months when I've been recording here in Mexico. The last line of the article says Britain has a serious opportunity to revive growth and restore economic security. Given the clear risks in the world economy, There isn't a moment to lose. So at no point really does he say that the UK push for a green economy makes even more sense. Well, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever if you're basing it on we need to print more pounds, we need to print more currency, and then sort of pump that into the economy and try and do these things. Because what's going to happen, again, is if you print loads of currency, you're just going to exacerbate the situation. You're not actually going to help reduce inflation. You're not actually going to help by creating more green technology. So yeah, I think there's a bit of clickbait here with this article. And again, with all due respect to Mr. Partington here, I would recommend you go and brush up on your economics, because just printing currency is not going to help whatsoever. The UK doesn't need to push too wildly to make a greener economy. We have a lot of stuff, a lot of oil, gas reserves in the North Sea. We need to focus on that first, get that pumping so we can then get that sorted. Then we can reduce our bills and everything in the UK. Then we can focus on infrastructure for the grid, etc., etc. And then we can look to go down the carbon route, eco warrior route, purely because we haven't got the infrastructure and we need oil or we need gas for now. That's as simple as. So I think the article's a bit of clickbait. Please do not get too carried away with all of these people talking about energy this, energy that. It's just fear mongering. It's a lot of fear tactics in there. You know better than that. I'm sure you do. That's why you're listening to Property Nomads. Talking of listening to Property Nomads, head over to iTunes, Spotify, etc., whatever podcast platforms there are. Subscribe to the podcast. We release Mondays and Thursdays. Also, leave us a review as well, because that really helps. And also, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please go and do that, because we do a lot more videos on YouTube. The more people that know about this message, the better, to be perfectly honest. It's going to help us in the future. It's going to help you in the future as well. See you in the next video.